Welcome to this morning session here titled AI for Good, a framework for building ethical solutions. Renal is representing the IEEE Computer Society and will speaking with us today on the essentials of how to incorporate responsibility into AI systems. I have the pleasure of introducing Renal today. She is a senior AI software engineering manager at Intel, leading engineering for the Intel Developer Cloud for Edge, offering remote access for deploying AI applications on Intel hardware and software. Her work utilizing Intel context sensing technology garnered an Innovation Award at the 2019 Consumer Electronics Show, CES. Renal is an IEEE senior member and serves as the secretary on the board of governors for the IEEE Computer Society. She's a strong advocate for sharing the importance of ethical practices at forums like the Embedded Vision Summit and the IEEE Conference on AI. She also serves as the vice chair for the IEEE Santa Clara Valley Women in Engineering chapter, focusing on building a strong community of technical women. So please post any questions during the presentation today in the chat. And without further ado, I'll hand it off to Renal.
Hey, thank you so much, Matt, for that wonderful introduction. So let's get started. All right. So today we are going to talk about importance of responsible AI. We're going to discuss responsible AI principles, and then we are going to delve into bias identification and mitigation. We'll also see how we can apply a human-centric design to our AI development. And then we'll talk a little bit about implementing ethical AI solutions in your AI development. So let's start with an example. Kiana Catone is a law student who appeared for an online state bar examination that was proctored by a software called ExamSoft. So she had to expose her face directly to very bright light in order to ensure that her skin tone didn't interfere with ExamSoft's facial recognition technology. She suffered from severe headaches due to this prolonged exposure, causing her a lot of distress and also giving other students an unfair advantage over her. So there are some more examples that we can look at about how AI is causing bias and is causing a lot of issues in its deployment. So some AI systems that were used to write articles ended up spreading misinformation. Uber driver pay determination algorithm at one point lacked transparency. Oracle surveillance system violated privacy, and the security of voice recognition systems can be evaded. AI systems caused accidents that caused harm to human, and ChatGPT can really turn anyone into threat actor if they know how to get to it. So there are many such stories from all walks of life that you can read about at the AI incident database, and it urges us to design our AI systems responsibly. So why should we even consider responsible AI? So if not developed responsibly, AI incidents can grow exponentially as the global AI market size, which is valued at once $36 billion, expands at a compound annual rate of 37%. ChatGPT and other generative AI offerings have really taken the world by storm and opened doors to new innovative solutions that have never been thought of before. So, ChatGPT, for example, is estimated to have reached 100 million monthly active users in just 2 months after launch, making it the fastest growing consumer application in history. Businesses have also underlined the importance of developing AI solutions responsibly to make them viable for consumers. AI incidents, apart from causing monetary losses in fines, lawsuits, loss of trust with our customers, and reputation damage that can have significant impact on safety and well-being of our society by causing harm to human life, propagating bias, spreading misinformation, and so much more. That is why it is important to establish a framework that can guide the solutions, development of AI solutions responsibly. So, establishing principles of responsible AI can help us define what is important to us. It can provide a guiding structure for product development, and it drives a common understanding between our partners and customers. It can serve as a structured prioritization mechanism and guide trade off discussions. So, here are some of the principles of responsible AI that leading corporations such as Intel, Google, Microsoft have adopted, and we will dive deeper into each one of these. So let's talk about the first principle of responsible AI, which is do no harm. So humans are the cornerstone of AI development. AI solutions should not support or tolerate usages that violate human rights. Let us now discuss this principle with examples, and I look forward to your active participation in the chat. So here is an example. A leading financial institution needs help to guide its consumers with mortgage applications. The agency plans on building an AI powered interactive chatbot that answers mortgage related questions. It would help people get specific information they want, such as current mortgage rates and pre qualification requirements, quickly while reducing the burden on agencies' employees. So, how should the agency start prototyping this chatbot? Please answer the poll question in the chat. We'll wait here for about 30 seconds. Yes, that's correct. It's B. Yeah. One potential harm that AI systems could that is that the AI system could be biased against certain group based on gender, ethnicity, location, potentially offering them higher mortgage rate or more stringent pre-qualification requirements than those of the other groups. The AI system that are built on limited data and evolving requirements tend to be error prone. So, a better strategy is to build a non AI prototype quickly, test it with a diverse group of potential users. It helps us to iterate easily and quickly and is much more less expensive than iterating on an AI prototype. It also provides early information on user expectations and needs, which can then be used to design the AI prototypes. Thank you for your active participation. So, the next principle that we are going to talk about is equity and inclusion. So, incorporating mechanisms in the development and deployment on AI system to help prevent bias and discrimination is very important. So, yeah, let's first look at how AI systems work at high level. So, at its heart is a model which is trained on relevant data for a particular use case, enabling it to either predict outcomes or identify patterns accurately. Once it achieves a certain level of accuracy and performance, it is then deployed into applications where end users can see its benefit. So bias can get introduced in any of these stages, right from like data generation to model building and deployment. So let's now look at the biases that can arise in some of these phases. So let's start with the historical bias. Historical bias arises if the data reflects the world as it was in the past rather than what it is today, and leads to a model that produces harmful outcomes. So, for example, occupation words like nurse in the past were highly associated with women, and engineer was highly associated with men. So if we are training on outdated data or from data that is like few years back, we really need to monitor it to ensure that it is not propagating any stereotypes and bias that were present from that era that do not make sense today. Another bias that can get introduced is representation bias. So this occurs when the data that is used to train the AI models does not accurately represent the target demographics, or when certain groups are underrepresented. Underrepresented. An example can be seen in voice recognition technologies that perform better for certain accents than others, largely due to overrepresentation of some demographics in training data. So CD is known to kind of, have that problem. So that is one example where representation bias is at play. Now let's talk about measurement bias. This happens when data collection methods are flawed. So for instance, consider, for example, Compass, which is a solution that predicts the likelihood that a defendant will reoffend, and it may be used by judges or parole officers to make decisions around pre-trial release. Now, because minority communities are more highly policed, this group is differentially mismeasured and it leads to biased outcomes. Now, let's talk about some of the biases that can come into play during the model building and implementation phase. So, aggregation bias arises from one size fit all model. So, results are not optimal for any group, or they favor the most dominant group. So, for example, certain emojis or hashtags may convey a particular meaning in a local context. So a non-specific model that is trained on all of Twitter data or X data on X would miss this context, leading to misclassification of tweets from this population, which is not represented by most of the use group. The next bias I would like to talk about is learning bias. And this bias is something that comes into play when we have to make certain trade offs. So, for example, prioritizing one objective may damage another objective, and we have to ensure that this if we are going to prioritize another object, that it doesn't affect negatively the original objective. So, for example, optimizing for privacy or compactness may affect the accuracy of the model. Um, there is a question here. Would this mean that AI is needing to be fed raw data rather than curated data sets in order to avoid logical fallacy in information output? No, this is very much the opposite. We need to really kind of clean our data and make sure that the data is aligned to our to the outcome that we want to achieve. So later in the presentation, I'll talk about some of the tools that can help to work with the data to make sure that we are really kind of analyzing that data to make sure that it is representative of the use case and of the user target that we are going to build. So it's very much like a lot of cleaning needed and good quality, unbiased data needed instead of feeding the raw data. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. So coming back to the learning bias, for example, optimizing for privacy or optimizing for compactness may affect the accuracy of the model. And then it needs to be monitored very closely to ensure the accuracy is still in the range that we want it to be. Okay, let's now talk about evaluation bias. And this type of bias arises when the benchmark data for a particular task does not represent the use population. So, for example, we see that drastically worse performance of some commercial facial analysis algorithms that perform tasks like smile detection on images of dark skinned women. So images of dark-skinned women comprise of less than 8% of common benchmark data. So what we see here is that the model performs really well in a test environment because the test data doesn't represent the images that are going to be seen when this model is deployed into systems. So because of this, it's not tested on wide set of data and the target use population. What we see is when it's deployed, the performance is quite poor. So we need to make sure that our evaluation and benchmark data is also inclusive and encompasses all of our target use population. And then lastly, I want to talk about deployment bias. And this arises due to off the shelf or off the label usage of the model rather than its intended use. So usually the task where it's used for is closely related to the original intended task, but it's subtly different. So we need to be very clear about what task this model is built for, and we should use it only for that use case. So for example, model intended to predict a person's likelihood of committing a future crime is also used to determine the length of a sentence. So they are closely related tasks, but they are different in terms of likelihood versus determining the length of sentence. So a model that is optimized for just predicting the likelihood of committing a future crime should not be used to determine the length of the sentence. So, yeah, let's look at an example now to kind of drive some of the discussion home. So, here is an example of Amazon's experimental hiring tool that used AI to give job candidates scores ranging from 1 to 5 star, much like how shoppers rate product on Amazon. And once they did notice that the system had biases, they immediately scrapped this tool scrapped the development of the tool. But there are some learnings here that I want to discuss. So some of the biases that were at play here was historical bias. So the models were trained to vet application by observing patterns in data and in resumes submitted to a company over a period of 10 years, over a 10-year period. So it reflected the world that was 10 years ago, where software developers had a strong association with men rather than women, and it contributed to historical bias. And there was also representation bias here at play because most data samples were from male applicants, reflecting the industry's male dominance. So Amazon's algorithm very quickly learned that the male applicants were the preferred candidates, and it penalized resumes that indicated that applicant was a female. And then lastly, it also suffered from aggregation bias because the system penalized underrepresented groups. So it penalized resumes that included words like women, as in the women's chess club captain, and it downgraded graduates of all women colleges. So certainly there were some biases at play here, and we definitely learned from this. And incorporated those in the future kind of hiring AI assisted hiring tools. Okay, so this coming back to the question that was asked previously about raw data and preparing the data for building for model development, we could certainly use some of the tools that are out there. So yeah, now that we know that bias can get introduced unintentionally and mitigating those is very complex, here are some of the tools that can help us detect and mitigate bias. So what if tool is an open source tool by Google, and you can visually probe the behavior of trained machine learning model with minimal coding. So it supports like 5 machine learning fairness matrix. It is also integrated with Jupyter notebooks and Vertex AI on Google Cloud, Google Colab, and TensorBoard as well. And it supports binary classification, multi-class classification, regression, and also data in tabular text and image format. So it is much more advanced tool, and it has very good, and you need sort of good data analysis skills to use it effectively. It is a great tool for bias identification. So this is where you could look at your data, probe it, and then you could kind of use a couple of fairness matrix to see that the data is aligned to those fairness matrix, and if not, then you can go back and collect some more data that is more representative. Yeah. Then let's also talk about the AI Fairness 360 by IBM, which is also an open source tool. It has about 70 plus fairness matrix and has 10 bias mitigation algorithms out of the box. It has good explanations of fairness matrix and integration with popular machine learning and AI tools like notebooks, Python APIs, and R code. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, I do see some questions in the chat. Yeah, so we'll kind of take those towards the end, and Matt is going to help me coordinate that. Okay, so the next responsible AI principle is that of improving transparency. So AI systems are black boxes for the most part. It is important to understand what is happening under the hood and explain to our users how a decision was made using AI and accuracy of that decision. So, one way to improve accuracy is by using model cards. So, think of it like release notes for your model. So, model cards convey a shared understanding of AI models, their intended use, performance, and limitations. We can list details about the data that was used to train the model and provide a way to also contact us for any clarification. We can easily automate the generation of AI models to keep them up to date with latest changes. So here is an example of a GPT-3 model card. Here you can see that it specifically warns the users that it was trained on arbitrary data from the web. So samples may contain offensive content and language. So it conveys that intent to the user and its limitations as well. Okay, so the next responsible AI principle is that of enabling human oversight. We need to provide human oversight to ensure that the AI systems are behaving as expected, and also provide a way for our users to challenge a decision that was made by the system and that can be reviewed by a human. So let's see. Yeah, here is another poll question for you. So, a social media platform is planning to deploy a new AI system to flag and remove social media messages that contain misinformation. Now, though this system has proven effective in test, it sometimes flags non-objectional content as misinformation. So please answer the poll question about how we should kind of look at this problem. I think I have simple poll questions. Yes, it's D. It's all of the above. Asking for user feedback in early phases of deployment and sharing clarification criteria helps improve the accuracy of the system and also build trust with our users. And allowing them to challenge a decision and planning for human review helps us reduce bias and improve our systems. All right. So, preserving privacy is yet another important responsible AI principle, and this involves seeking consent before any data collection, protecting the data from any breaches, and providing mechanisms to users to delete their data. And now, some of the like with EU AI Act and some of the other kind of legislation, this is becoming very important, but also it was important always, but now it's also being kind of put into like a formal responsible AI checklist and a framework, and companies that kind of will not kind of honor this, they would be penalized with heavy fines and sanctions and things like that. All right, so let's talk about a few mechanisms for preserving privacy. So, a mechanism to preserve privacy, one of the mechanism is differential privacy, which involves publicly sharing information about a data set while withholding information about individuals. Another mechanism is federated learning, which involves training an algorithm across multiple decentralized edge devices or servers holding local data samples without exchanging them. It also requires enough local computing power and memory and high bandwidth connections. So, here also we need to be aware of privacy versus accuracy trade off and be mindful that we are not introducing any learning bias. All right, let's talk about the next responsible AI principle, which is security, safety, and sustainability. So it's very important to design AI systems with security first mindset and enforce end-to-end AI safety and optimize the implementation of AI algorithms to use less power and energy. So security attacks again can happen at any stage of AI system AI deployment, development and deployment. So let's talk about some of the security attacks as well. So some of the examples of security attacks during the training phase of the model include data poisoning, where an adversary can inject bad data into the model's training pool and manipulate the data to a point to render it useless. Also, there are backdoor attacks where model behaves normally until a specific input triggers an incorrect output. Let's talk about some of the inference attack examples as well, and then this include evasion attack, where that manipulates the input so that it can evade the deployment model. So, for example, if we have an image classifier introducing noise such as stop sign, such that the stop sign is classified as something else that can significantly increase the possibility of an accident. We also have model stealing attacks where attackers try to steal the model without the knowledge of addressed model. Stealing model parameters can happen with side channel attacks and reading from underlying device as well. So attackers can also regenerate a substitute model from input and corresponding outputs. And then data extraction attacks are where attacks queries the model in an attempt to infer its training data. So now that we know of some of the attacks, what are some of the tools that we can use to help us? So adversarial robustness toolkit or art is a Python library that can help us simulate a red team which formulates the attack and blue team that defends the system against the attack. So it will help us know how robust our model is and how it will perform when it is deployed in the real world. So art supports also like all popular machine learning frameworks such as TensorFlow, Keras, PyTorch, MixNet, and scikit-learn as well, and all types of data, so image, tables, audio, video, and as well as common machine learning tasks like classification and object detection. All right, so let's talk about deepfakes. So, deepfakes are synthetic creations where videos, images, or audios are manipulated to replicate human actions that never actually happen. So, as these are becoming more sophisticated, they pose a significant threat to the integrity of information as well as individual privacy. Now, the challenge in dealing with deepfakes traditionally lies in its detection. So, most current applications require lengthy processing time where videos must be uploaded and analyzed and often take hours to yield result. And this delay is a major hurdle in the time and effective response to curtail the spread of false information. So at Intel, we have made a breakthrough in addressing this issue with the development of Intel Fake Catcher, which is the world's first real-time deep fake detector. This innovative technology leverages an exceptional method of detecting deepfakes by analyzing the blood flow within the pixels of a video. It's designed to identify the unique heart rate patterns inherent in genuine human videos, which are typically absent in fabricated content. So, Fake Catcher not only boosts of a remarkable detection accuracy of 96%, but it also demonstrates robust scalability. It is capable of running 72 different detection streams simultaneously. So, as the digital landscape evolves, so do the challenges we face. We need more such tool to fight back against challenges like deepfake. All right, so here is another example. So, how can we improve autonomous vehicles? So, what are some ways to improve the safety of autonomous vehicle? And then again, you may pick more than one option. So, we'll wait for 30 seconds. Please respond in the chat. Yeah, it's correct. It's all of the above. So it's important to incorporate safety features of regular vehicles. It's also important to test the system under various variety of environment. And it's also very much important to hire an internal red team to play the role of bad actors and seeking to manipulate the autonomous driving system. All right. So let us now look at how we can bring together all of the AI principles that we discussed by designing with human-centric approach in different phases of AI development. So in the definition phase, we really need to assess if AI can add value to its use and have clarity on who our target users are. So this in definition phase, I have typically noticed that it is not very well defined, and everyone wants to get on the AI hype. So sometimes AI is used just for the sake of using AI, but its real application is not thought through. And also, I have seen that people don't spend enough time on defining who the target users are. So this is very important because once your target user is defined, it specifically curate your data and your AI development only for that target user so that it's clear, and it does not disadvantage other target users who are out of scope. So yeah, and we need to translate any user needs to data needs and brainstorm any unintended consequence and bias that a system may introduce. It is also important to build inclusive teams that contain domain expertise along with AI expertise and also target user representation. In the development phase, it is important to source high quality, unbiased data and enable human oversight, test with a diverse user base, and incorporate built in safety mechanisms as well. In the deployment phase, we need to provide a way for users to challenge the outcome, and also provide manual controls when AI fails and offer high touch customer support. We also need to explain how the system works to our users in very layman terms. So we are all engineers and we want to explain everything in terms of all technical terms and how cool our technology is. But for the end user, it's important to understand in layman terms how system works so that they can make some of the decisions for themselves as well. And then it's also important to transparently share the limitation of the technology and to provide ways to control the privacy settings. So yeah, now let's talk about how to respond or how to prepare to respond to an AI incident. It's important to keep ourselves up to date with all of the evolving legislatures and regional laws, and to proactively prepare for an AI incident in case one happens. And in spite of all, it's very common nowadays. We are seeing a lot of AI incidences, so this preparation is really, really kind of important. And if you look at an AI incident plan, it is a collaboration between product development, marketing, and customer relations team to identify, contain, and recover from an AI incident. A strong communication plan aims at explaining really what happened, why it happened, the entities affected, a remediation plan, and some of the lessons learned. So let's talk with an example. Here is an example of a good AI incident response plan from Microsoft when a chat they introduced turned offensive. So it clearly explains what happened. The chatbot started posting offensive and hurtful tweets. It also explained why it happened. So, a coordinated attack by a subset of people exploited a vulnerability, and there was a critical oversight for this specific attack. Then the plan talks about remediation and next steps. So the Tay, which is the name of the chatbot, is now offline, and will look back to bring Tay only when we are confident we can better anticipate malicious intent that conflicts with our principles and values. We will take this lesson forward as well as those from our experiences in China, Japan, and US. So right now we are hard at working addressing the specific vulnerabilities that was exposed by attack on Tay. So this was a very good response plan where they outlined in detail really what happened, and what they are doing to remediate it. All right, so I want to close with a few key takeaways. So, establishing responsible AI principles such as respecting human rights, equity and inclusion, transparency, enabling human oversight, preserving privacy, and enabling security and safety, and also adopting sustainable mechanisms and driving those into product definition will help guide the decision making of responsible AI development. And adopting a human-centric approach at every stage of your product development will help incorporate responsible AI principles into your application. We also saw that preventing bias is very complex, so it is important to incorporate mechanisms to prevent bias, document some of the trade-offs we are making, and share it with our users transparently, and also recheck often for bias once the systems are deployed in production environments. It is also important to conduct regular assessments, audits, and update our AI response plan and keep ourselves updated with the evolving legislation, regional laws, and standards as well. So I urge all of you to please advocate for responsible usage of AI and also report any unfair use of AI to the AI incident databases. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Great talk. Great talk. Super interesting. So we're going to move into the Q&A session here now. So please post any comments in the chat where I just said the same thing, and I'll read them out. But I can go ahead and get us started with some of the ones from earlier. So first, you showed a lot of you showed two different tools that had a lot of different fairness metrics. But what if they give different results? And how then do you handle that?
Oh, so those are for two different purposes. So the What If tool by Google actually helps you with scenario planning and probe your data. So it's really a data analysis kind of tool. And then the IBM 360 is really kind of educating you with a lot of fairness matrix. And then for your particular use case, you will choose what fairness matrix makes sense. So it's quite a common scenario, right? So, say for example, you are considering this use case of determining college admission algorithm, right? So, say for example, mechanical engineering department, where we don't see that as many of female candidates as we would see for male candidates. Then, what is our decision making matrix, right? Are we going to grade all the candidates in the same way, or are we going to assign some matrix different weightage, and are those weightage going to vary across male and female candidates, right? So those kind of decisions are what determine the fairness matrix. So the 360 tool help us like with different kind of fairness matrix, and it also has some of the bias mitigation algorithms that you can apply out of the box for some of the common AI kind of tasks. So they do serve different purpose. The what if tool is mainly focused on data analysis and checking the quality of your data.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Uh, Caleb in the chat asked, how do we actually go about removing bias when we're curating our data sets?
Yeah, it's quite complex, right? And that is why it's a function of many different things. So when we are thinking about data set, we just focus too much on the data set. So as I kind of outlined, we first need to determine what is that one particular task and what is that target usage. So once we have clarity around that, then we can actually go and look at our data to make sure that it's representative or not, and then source more data if needed.
Okay, I see. I guess as a follow-up to that, is it possible then to, in the process of cleaning our data, introduce yet another bias?
Oh yeah, that very much happens. So that's why some sophisticated tools and good analysis, data analysis skills are very much needed. And then again, this is like very outlining and clearly outlining what our objectives are, because you can go back to that objective and those matrix and check whether we are kind of introducing some other bias or not. That typically always happens. So first, like people kind of look at representation bias, and then while they are optimizing for one objective or the other. So, for example, there are very big models. Then, say, for example, our deployment target is smartphones. Then we need to optimize for performance and less power usage. And when we do that, we see that the accuracy drops down. So, it is always like recheck and then having those clearly defined objectives, and say for example matrix as well, right? So if it's like an accuracy you're targeting, we need to kind of go back and check and
I see.
recheck. So that's
Yeah,
why
every
it's
single time you make a change. So Lynette in chat asked, breast cancer drugs and the research behind them, along with side effects, are not transparent, and there have been significant harm to patients. Are stronger efforts underway to provide for greater transparency with this type of data?
Yes, in healthcare, right? AI has been like healthcare has been one of the early adopters of AI. And it wasn't so the awareness wasn't so there wasn't like it was starting out few years back. In fact, I have personally faced this like on one of my medical tests. The data was not accurate, and because the samples of my ethnicity and age group were not representative in that data set. So efforts are certainly underway, and actually doctors are also kind of again defining some of the target user groups. So for example, some of the models were seen to not perform well on like people with African American origin. So for them, they have like taken this. Sometimes like doctors have all of this data, so they decide like which ethnicity they can use this AI system or some of the drugs, and while for others, then they don't use those AI systems. So no, it's kind of uh, a collective effort across the board, because as end users, right, not everybody has that background. The patients really don't have that background to understand how decisions are being made. So doctors are playing a very big role here in terms of ensuring that it's fair.
I guess as a quick follow-up to that question, rather than just using maybe accuracy as what makes the ultimate decision from the AI, are there any kind of other explainability tools that might help
Yeah.
add more transparency?
For sure, yeah, there is a lot of there is a lot of research underway with explainability tools, because like AI are most for the most purpose it's like a black box. So we don't understand what is happening under the hood. So there is definitely a lot of research undergoing, and explainability is certainly one of the very upcoming areas, and that helps us first ourselves undercover like how the decisions are being made. And once we understand that, it becomes easy for us to explain to the end users who do not understand those tools, but they do understand how decisions are being made. Yeah.
Yeah. About 5 minutes here. There's another question here from Sylvie. What are the different ways that IEEE Computer Society members can get involved in the advocacy for ethical AI development? And anything specific for students?
Yeah, sure. So there are many avenues to get involved. First and foremost is if you are academically inclined, right? You can kind of conduct research, share those findings with a lot of our journals, a lot of our kind of magazines, and a lot of our conferences as well. That's definitely one way. The other one is like there is AI standards work going on as well. So you can consider participating in the AI and ethical standards work groups. That's another way. And then the third one is like similar to me as well. You can be an advocate and talk more about responsible AI and how it can be incorporated into product development, because there is so much more need for this to create this awareness, because most of the time it is just about getting the AI system to work that we forget about all of the other aspects that are very much needed. And then the mentorship is also another kind of avenue you can consider. So there are
Great.
avenues are plenty. It's how far your passion can take you.
Yeah, you're doing a great job by doing all these talks and panels. Uh, there's one last question that we might be able to get to here about what is the difference between explainability and interpretability?
So explainability is much more about like matrix and how we can explain how AI systems do work under the hood. Now the interpretability, can you just kind of give more background, like what context you mean, maybe an example, so that I can correlate the interpretability in context. So if you can share that in the chat, that would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, Kat, if you've, I guess if you've experienced any kind of areas where this comes up.
Yeah.
But while she's typing that, do you have any other parting thoughts here in our final 2-3 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, please, so right now, I like urge all of you to consider like advocating for responsible AI for sure. And also, like, as you are kind of working on your open source projects or working on your graduate projects, also think about how you can incorporate this into product development as well. And do consider engaging in research, because a lot needs to be done here, and it's so much like wider area that has been not explored yet. And especially with the new wave of generative AI solutions that are kind of upcoming with large language models, small language models, and other AI solutions, there is definitely a collective need for all of us to kind of explore this together and make sure that it is fair and equitable for all of us involved.
Chat GPT will keep pushing. We got to keep on the ethics side.
Yes.
Well, I think we're gonna probably have to leave it there for sake of time. But thank you so much for talking with us today, Ronald.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And especially for the question that had a follow up, please do connect with me offline and we can discuss further.